Okay, Angela, I'm going to tell you the name of today's animal, and I
Hmm.
want you to tell me the first thing that you think it would eat when you hear that name. And I know you're a biologist, so
I
no
know.
no digging in your brain for facts. I want that just immediate gut reaction, that kind of word
So you want
association
me
sort of
to?
thing
So you
people
may
do.
you maybe want me to answer it like pre becoming a biologist.
I just, you know how they do things like if I say window, what's the first word that comes to mind?
Scraper.
Okay, and if I say cold, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Sneeze.
Okay, awesome. I was thinking snowflakes, but that works. See, that's what we're going for. So I'm
Okay.
going to do it with
I
this
feel I
first
like
word.
this warm up as well because then it's going to catch me off guard a little bit more.
All right,
Give
here's
me a couple more.
best science fiction show ever.
Star Wars.
Oh man, you're just failing. You're just failing. I tell you. Okay, blue,
Green.
snake,
Hiss.
dragonfly,
Buzz.
fisher.
Mammal.
Okay, what about what fishers eat?
Fishers eat fish.
Okay, see,
But I know that's
that's
what you wanted me to say.
that is true. That is true.
If I
I'm gonna
was
be.
if I was
Go
just
ahead.
doing Angela, I would say like squirrels.
Yes, true. But I think that with a name like Fisher, like sometimes our first gut reaction is
Yeah.
fish. I'm wondering what our gut reaction for our listeners was. When I first learned about fishers, I was very surprised that fishers do not, in fact, go fishing and they rarely, if ever, eat fish. So, how did that get that name? We will fish for that answer after our introduction.
Welcome to The Wandering Naturalist, a Three Rivers Park District podcast. I'm Angela, she, her, a wildlife biologist with Three Rivers Park District.
And I'm Brandon, he, him, an interpretive naturalist with Three Rivers Park District. Three Rivers Park District manages over 27,000 acres of parks on lands that are the ancestral and contemporary homeland of the Dakota people in suburban Hennepin County and surrounding areas.
So join us as we wander from park to park and discuss your stories of the past, the nature in our present, and how they have shaped our parks.
Come wander with us,
The Wandering Naturalist.
All right, so Angela, you know and I know fishers don't eat fish.
Yeah.
Which honestly really confused me when I first learned about them. I was 14 and I had just gotten the Christmas gift that I wanted most of all. It was the textbook, The Mammals of Minnesota, as I'm sure
Good
most
book.
14-year-olds asked for. Yeah,
Sure,
it's great.
everyone asked for
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And of course, I was reading the cover to cover and I came across the weasel family and the fisher. And I was like, oh, this creature is awesome. It's big. It's really cool. And obviously, it must swim in the water and eat fish like a river otter. And no, it doesn't do that at all. It's good at climbing trees, doesn't seem to like to swim. And so then I had to know, why was it called a fisher? And do you know why it's called a fisher?
I've read in reading Roger's book, who is amazing that we're having him as a guest, but that's really the only place that I've done a dive into why it's called that, because I feel like in my line of work, you come across a lot of weirdly named things that you're just like,
Mm-hmm.
why? It makes absolutely no sense. So I'm not as keen to the fisher, but I have heard that there's multiple theories or
Okay.
speculation. I feel like one of them that I read about had to do with like what you mentioned, like similarly looks like an otter. So maybe there was something there early on where it was confused that it was something different. I'm trying to remember. I feel like there's at least 3 of them. What ones have you found?
So there's 2 that I came from. One is lore to the northeast of the United States, and it claims that John James Audubon reported the name Fisher for it because, quote, it has a singular fondness for the fish used to bait traps. But what my research says was a more likely reason is that it's a Dutch colonial version of the word fitch,
Yes,
which
that is the
means
other one.
European polecat.
Yeah.
Yeah, and apparently it looks like a European polecat.
Yeah.
So I tend to lean towards that one. I think there's so many animals where we have a version of what its original name was. We don't say it quite how it originally was said. So that makes sense to me. Did you have a favorite one out of your research?
No, I feel like there isn't. Again, it's fun to speculate and for people to come up with their own stories. So I think that kind of adds to the mysteriousness of fishers. So I'm all for keeping that open, and I don't have a favorite. Keep the stories
Yeah.
coming.
Well, I really, really like fishers. I think they're incredible animals. They're well adapted to old growth forests in northern Minnesota and Canada. But they have been expanding their range south. And historically, they've even been this far south before. And we know they're in Hennepin County. It was maybe 10 or 11 years ago, as of 2025, when I remember seeing fisher tracks on the trail right by Eastman Nature Center and taking a picture and sending it to y'all at
That's
NRM and being like,
cool.
there's a fisher here.
Yeah.
And now the University of Minnesota is studying fishers in Elm Creek Park Reserve. And so I'm really excited to talk about them because they're an animal that I just associate with, like, if we picture the North Woods, it feels like a fisher's an embodiment of it. But now it's living down where we are. And so you and I are going to discuss what makes fishers a special member of the weasel family. Then we'll be joined by Dr. Michael Joyce to talk about research on fishers that they're doing in Elm Creek Park Reserve and other parts of Hennepin County. And then finally, the expert on fishers, Dr. Roger Powell, is going to talk with us in episode 3 about habitats and fishers and what they need to survive. Are you ready to discuss fishers?
Let's bring it. I don't know much, so I am not afraid to tell people as a biologist. I don't know all the animals of Minnesota. Shocking, I know. My brain does not function that way. I don't know many people that do. I don't know how you naturalists do it.
When you have, thousands of insects to remember, and that's your specialty, I think we can forgive you for not researching every single mammal.
So I'm excited to learn alongside everyone else.
Awesome. Well, I think if we're going to discuss what a fisher is, as we do with a lot of times when we go into what a particular animal is, we should really start with their family. And fishers are members of the weasel family, Mustelidae, or however you pronounce that.
I think you did it great. That's how I would do it.
Woohoo! This family is one of the most diverse families among carnivores, but there are a few special traits that members of the family share. And so I think, to me, one of the most distinctive things about the weasel family is their body shape.
Yeah, it sticks out. You see that on the landscape. You mentioned the tracks, which also kind of bodes to their body shape. But also, I always think, too, the first time I saw a fisher in the parks, it's that arching tube-like body and the way they kind of move that makes them stand out to catch your eye and go, what is that?
They look like a running slinky.
Yeah,
honestly.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Like, their body's kind of the same shape. It's narrow, it's tube shape. Their back moves like a slinky, and we'll get into why that is. But they have a relatively long tube-shaped body with really short legs. And this body shape helps them squeeze into tight holes when hunting their prey. They can climb trees efficiently if they're a tree climber like fishers, or if they're a swimmer, it helps with swimming, like our semi-aquatic species like mink and river otters. It's a really good adaptation for how they move, but there is a disadvantage, especially in Minnesota. When you are long and skinny, you have a lot of surface area for your volume.
Snow. It's got to be snow.
It's cold. Yeah. Like, when you think about animals within the same species, they tend to be smaller at the equator and larger towards the poles. And that's because they want to have less surface area for their volume the closer that they come up to the poles, because that's going to help them trap in heat. It's going to help them stay warmer. When you're closer to the equator, you want to lose heat faster. That's partly why, even though elephants are really big, they have massive ears. It's a huge amount of surface area to lose that heat. Now, because weasels don't have a lot of volume for their surface area because of their shape, they lose their heat really, really fast. So that isn't necessarily a good thing in environments like a Minnesota winter. So they have to make up for this by having a high metabolism, producing more heat, and eating a whole lot.
Yeah, and that's what's really cool for those that haven't read Roger's book. He talks about kind of their metabolism and how he studied that. So I'm really excited to talk to him more about that, because he actually had fishers in captivity that he bred to look at that very thing about their energy.
Really? Oh, that's awesome.
Yes. Well, you'll have to borrow the book, Brandon, because it's super cool.
Yes.
The other thing I think is cool, I mentioned the snow. So they move differently on the snow because of this. So the way they would move on land without snow is different than how they would move on snow. Because, again, you think of that, how they are structured, they would break through the snow and doing that normal, bounding movement, like you said, like a moving slinky. So that works great on land, but not so great on snow.
So how do they move differently on snow?
From my understanding, again, I'm so very new to this and just brushed on it, and we could probably ask the experts about it, but they don't do the bounding movement. So they and their feet
Okay.
again. So this is a cool thing. Like if you've ever looked up close at a picture of a fisher, their feet are cool and different, especially their back feet. Like they look like they're long, right? Like almost
Hmm.
like how a rabbit foot is longer, like their feet in the back and how they walk, right? Like they're not walking on toes. They're kind of like walking on their whole foot.
Yes, and I have seen tracks in the snow of them bounding. So I do know they bound in the snow. So maybe we will have to ask Dr. Roger about, or Dr. Powell about how their movement might be a little bit different when they're on the snow than when they're on land. But you're right, their feet have, at least for fishers, have a lot of fur in their toes, which helps with traction. Probably helps keep them warm too. But that is the thing I wanted to get into is their movement. They have a very unique way of moving quickly, which we kind of touched on. It's called bounding. And again, it looks like a slinky being waved up and down. So the best way I am able to describe it, without having a video, which we will have videos on our social media pages, but what they do is they push off with their back legs and they leap forward. So their body, their front legs are going up, and then their front legs start to go down. So they almost look like an upside down U. Their front legs land, and while their back legs are still at the top of this U, their front legs push off, moving their upper body forward and up. And now their body looks like a V. Their back legs then land right where their front legs were. They're known for their back legs landing in the same spot as their front legs. So you often, when you see their tracks, look like parallel rows of just two tracks because they
Mm.
land where one is from the other. And then their back legs land and push off, and they repeat this process. And so think about your own body. You could probably make that U shape relatively easy. You probably can't make a V shape with your belly, the point of the V pointing down towards the ground. And the reason they can bend in this U and V shape is because their spine is special. Most animals, including us, have protrusions called processes coming off our vertebrae. So if you look at a picture of a vertebrae, you're going to see little knobs or triangles coming off the circular part of the vertebrae. And what those do is they keep our spine from bending too much. So when you kind of reach the limit of what you can bend backwards, and I'm bending backwards now to show you, even though you can't see me, which means my volume probably isn't great with my microphone. But those protrusions, those knobs, keep your spine from bending anymore. Now, these processes, the reason they do that is so you don't damage your spinal cord. But weasels have much smaller processes, much smaller knobs in their vertebrae, which allows it to bend a lot more than others. And so that is why they can have that unique shape, which allows them to do that unique movement that really is unique to the weasel family.
Yeah, I got to see it one time at Crowhassan. We saw something really quick, and that movement is, yeah, you would think otter or weasel, or that's kind of where your brain goes to, but the sheer size of it, we were like, no way, that has got to be a fisher. And I remember when we came back to tell our manager at the time, he didn't believe us. He was like, no way, nope, it wasn't a fisher. You didn't see a fisher, they're not around here, nope. And it wasn't until later that we were, years later, able to prove it on trail cameras and other signs like tracks to be like, no, they're here.
That was the first reaction when we sent the track pictures in, and so we had to
Yeah,
go back and measure
you
it
were
and send it in
denied. Denied.
with a ruler to say, hey, I really don't think me and Kev tracks this big.
No,
So yeah, I mean, but in fairness, it was so unusual.
it
Like it
is.
was so, like we hadn't really
Or
had reports
was.
of fishers down this far south at that time.
So let's talk diets, because I think this kind of gets in a little bit maybe to the north or to
Yeah.
the south.
And again, this is weasels in general, but what do weasels eat?
Yeah, so all members of the weasel family are carnivores. So like all members of the carnivore family, they have really cool teeth. Like really unique jaws, and their fourth upper premolar and first lower molar are carnassials.
Oh, did you hear the
The
loon?
loon is joining us.
Wow. It's probably sad because it doesn't have carnassials.
Probably, yeah, a little jealous. That might help with fish if it did. That's weird to picture a loon with teeth, though.
Right?
But we'll have to show diagrams of this because it's, again, try to think of like, it almost creates like a scissor action for how the top and the bottom work together to tear meat because they are such specialized carnivores.
And really self-sharpening scissors. Like as they rub against each other, they keep themselves sharp so they can really tear through that meat easier. And if you want to see what it looks like, you can actually look at, if you have a dog or a friend with a dog, look in their mouth. Carnivores have carnassials, and you can see a top and bottom tooth that look extra wide and like they fit together in the side of your dog's mouth on either side, and those are carnassial teeth. All right. I think the last thing I want to get over with weasels is just they're stinky. Members of the weasel family, they have anal scent glands that release a really strong musk used to mark territory. I've heard wolverines might be stinkier than skunks.
Right.
I know skunks were originally thought to be in the weasel family. They're now in their own family. But one of the reasons was because of how stinky skunks are, along with some other attributes as well. But yeah, weasels can be pretty smelly, but unlike skunks, they cannot spray their musk
Yeah,
long
so
distances.
let's say that skunks are still the stinkiest.
Yeah. All right. So now we know about weasels. We got to talk about what are things that make a fisher particularly unique. And you kind of went into the size
Yeah, so
and
much bigger.
how big they are. So how big are fishers?
Well, they can grow to be 24 to 30 inches long. And so, again, we often think of the common weasels in Minnesota. Only the river otter is bigger, which is, again, I think people are kind of blown away at how big otters are, too. If you've never seen one up close, they're pretty dang big, too. Females can weigh to 6 to 8 pounds, while males can weigh up to 18 pounds. So this is where you have difference between the sexes, where the females are going to be smaller than the males.
And to give people some comparisons, a mink, which is another relative, it's a medium-sized weasel. They can be up to 20 inches long and weigh up to 4 pounds. Red foxes might be a better comparison for more people. They're about as long as a fisher, but they stand taller because of longer legs. And they actually weigh less than male fishers. They only weigh about 8 to 15 pounds in Minnesota. So even though they're about the same size, weasels just have a little bit more heft to them. At least the male weasels do.
And some people, I remember this when I took ecology, we had to learn the difference between, you had to do all this, the furs and the skulls and things like that. And I always remember being hung up between one that looks very similar to the fisher, which is our pine marten. So they have some similarities there. They do have some differences. That little patch on the chest, I know, is one that I always used as a good one. But they are very similar. They are both very excellent. And you talked about this tree climbers. So when you think of like how a squirrel, I always think of like how a squirrel moves on a tree. They're super efficient, right? Like what else do you see moving around on a tree so quickly? Think of that kind of in a glorified, larger version in a carnivore sense. That's kind of terrifying to think of how agile and great and adapted they are to tree climbing.
Yeah, and one of the reasons they're so good is their ankle joints are flexible, which allows their hind paws to rotate almost 180 degrees, just like squirrels. This allows them to be one of the few mammals that can climb trees head first as they're going down. And this probably allows them to hunt for prey like squirrels, though most of their hunting does seem to be on the ground, at least from the research I've done. And honestly, that is the first time I ever saw a fisher. Not just this track, but the fisher itself. It was an Elm Creek Park Reserve, and Paul Schlick, a volunteer that's been on before,
Yeah, doing the
he took
raptor
me out to
surveys.
it. Yep, he took me to an eagle nest, and he was like, "Look right there," and a fisher just stuck its head out of the nest. And I was like, "Oh, this is amazing!" It was something I had been dreaming of seeing for like 15 years at that point. It was incredible. We talked a little bit about diet in general for weasels, but diet for fishers is something that I think we can go into a little bit more detail too. They're carnivores again who eat squirrels. Sometimes they'll even eat pine martens. Their preferred food seems to be, at least in the north, snowshoe hares. And they are one of the only predators that eat porcupines.
And this is a debated one. This is a debated one if you get into it a little bit. I know Roger and Michael will both weigh in on this, but some people will say that there's evidence that other big predators also eat porcupines, but I would agree with Roger. They seem like they're pretty specialized from what his observations have been with porcupines specifically. And think of how hard that like animals die from trying to eat a porcupine.
Yeah, and I want to clarify. You're saying not that it's debated that fishers eat porcupines, but it's debated that other predators might eat them too.
Right. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Yep. And that's why I always like to say things like one of the only predators, because there's so much in nature that we don't observe, that we don't know. That to me is part of the fun of it. One thing I want to clarify though is there's this popular belief that the reason fishers can eat porcupines is they take their claws and flip them over. So then the porcupine's like a turtle stuck on its back, waving its arms, and then the fisher can just go for its belly and eat it. That is actually not true. How they kill the porcupines is they move quickly to stay in front of the porcupine, and they bite the porcupine's head repeatedly
Yeah,
until
it's
the
a face.
porcupine
It's a
dies.
face head kill.
Yep, yep. So they're
Over
not flipping them.
and over time, it seems like not right. They have to go in quick and then come back out to not get the quills.
Yeah, because those quills hurt, and those quills have almost like fish scale shaped structures on them. They're not barbed like people think, and those fish scale structures make it even harder to pull out, but it also allows the quill to move through the body. It's porcupine quills are just they're
No, thank you.
impressive and not something I want. They will also, it's been documented, eat fruits and nuts, and probably one of the reasons for that is they have to eat constantly to make up for the heat loss from their extremely low body fat percentage and from their body shape, as we talked about
High
earlier.
metabolism, yeah.
Yeah. And so they actually have a really efficient hunting method, which I actually appreciate because it reminds me of playing Battleship. Do you like to play Battleship?
You know, whenever my son asks, I'm always like, it's not my favorite.
Not my favorite game anymore.
We even have the Star Wars version. Still, I'm just like, well, I always have to be the dark side.
See, it's because you're not playing the Star Trek version. It's so much better.
Oh, okay. That'll change it.
So I know most people that I go and do Battleship with, they just randomly kind of
all over
throw their guesses over,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I tend to pick a line and then just go in a diagonal down the board, and then I go a couple spaces over and go in a diagonal down the board until I find a ship.
Okay.
So I kind of make it a diagonal.
How is that similar to a
pattern.
fisher?
That is a lot like how they find their food, because like when we think about watching a dog run in our yard, it's everywhere. It's skitter scattering because it has plenty of food. It has energy to burn. But most animals, they have a limited food supply. They got to find their food. They're on an energy resource budget, which means they can't waste their energy by running wherever they want and investigating. They tend to run in the straight line. And so if a fisher runs in a straight line, it very well might miss the straight line that another animal is running in. So what weasels and especially fishers do is they hunt in diagonal zigzag patterns. So they'll choose this almost quadrant and they'll zigzag back and forth to try to intersect these straight lines of their prey running. And when they find that, then they'll follow that track, the smell that they hit going in that zigzag pattern. It allows them to be a little bit more efficient in finding prey in the least amount of time so they can get as much food as they really can to help power that metabolism.
That's cool. I'm hoping everyone now will get their Battleship games out and think like a fisher.
No, I don't want that because I want to keep winning.
We'll have to have a match.
That'll be our next Wandering Naturalist program, Battle the Battleships.
So what else? Is there anything else with their diet, or is it time to move on to another facet of a wonderful fact on fishers?
I think we've got a few more facts to cover before we run out of time. I love their fur. Their fur is thick in winter. It was prized by fur trappers because it's so thick and warm. And unlike their smaller weasel cousins that turn white in the winter, they have a dark brown-black coat.
It's such a beautiful color.
Camouflage in trees. It really is. In the summer, their fur takes on a mottled appearance. That is one of the reasons fishers were hunted nearly to extinction, is because of their fur, because it was in such high demand. And then predators. They really, especially the males, don't have a lot of predators. At least it doesn't seem like it.
Yeah.
For males, it might be bald eagles occasionally.
Whoa, that'd be a dude.
Wouldn't that'd be amazing to see.
That'd be something to witness. And do you think that would be when they're in the nest?
So when I saw the fisher in the nest, it was in the winter. We'll have to ask some of the researchers. Yeah. I would be really surprised if it's gone into the nest while it's there.
When would an eagle and fisher cross paths?
I don't know. But if you think of, I have seen eagles go after squirrels.
True.
And I imagine it'd be something similar. The fisher is out in the field. The eagle sees it. It's just an opportunity. I don't know, though. I could be very wrong.
What about bobcats or other?
My understanding is that females seem to mostly be taken by bobcats. Males might be too big. But again, there's a lot we don't know. There's a lot we haven't seen. And so I'm always curious to learn more about this. Fishers, as we talked about, they were hunted nearly to extinction. But with protections, they made a comeback in Minnesota. What's strange, though, is what we consider, at least what I've considered to be kind of their primary habitat, northern Minnesota, in that nice boreal forest. It's declining while they seem to be expanding their population south here in Hennepin County and even further south. And so the University of Minnesota is studying fishers living in Three Rivers Parks and the metro area to determine why they are moving south. So in our next episode, we are going to discuss this research with Dr. Michael Joyce.